Did you know that the price of a different metal is related to the crustal abundance of the metal? Hey everyone, Tactical Timmy here. I wanted to talk about the price of these different metals that you see before us, copper, silver, and gold, and how they are actually related to the crustal abundance, or how much of that metal is actually in the earth. And I got this idea from actually listening to an interview that Jordan Peterson did, an interview with Roy Sabag. Roy Sabag was actually a young investor who got into investing in different mining stocks. Specifically, he got really interested in precious metals mining stocks. And with that, he kind of learned that there were different ways to actually value. He was a value investor. And what that means is he's looking for things that are underpriced and he's trying to buy them when they're underpriced. And with that, he was trying to analyze, hey, what actually makes these things underpriced? And with that, he would actually go out and try and view and find out how much of the copper was out there, how much of the silver was out there, and how much of the gold was actually in these specific mines that he was considering purchasing. And what he found is that there is a relation or a correlation between the price of a different metal and its actual crustal abundance. And those things are related. Now, he also talks about in this interview his actual approach to economics. And with his approach to economics, he tends to have a more classical view where if we have good economic systems, our money should be tied to these things in the natural world. So that crustal abundance, or how much of the actual metal is out there, should be tied to the actual price of the metal. And I wanted to actually go ahead and I wanted to check this for myself. So I pulled some different data for our different prices of metal. That's really easy to do. You can go out on Google and find the different prices of metal. You can also go out and search on U.S. Geologic Surveys and verify it in a couple different places on Google and actually see what the crustal abundance of these different metals are. And that's going to be measured in parts per million. And that was a little bit of a new way that I'd thought about doing it. I'd always thought about things being like a percentage of it, but parts per million would be just simply the millionths place on a percentage. So that would make sense to me. And what we found is that gold is actually the rarest metal of the metals that you see before you, with a parts per million of 0.004 parts per million, whereas silver is way more than double that. It is actually at 0.05 parts per million. So you have a whole extra. It goes to the thousandths place for gold, and then this one only goes to the hundredths place. So 0.05 for silver and 0.004 for gold on the other hand. Now, copper, it is ranged, depending on the source that I was looking at online. There was kind of a range of what we actually thought that copper's crustal abundance was, and it kind of ranged between 50 to 70 parts per million. So with that, we see this range, and we see that, hey, as the crustal abundance is actually getting higher as we go up here. So there's the least amount of gold in the world, then there's a little bit more silver, and then there's way more copper out there. And we actually see this throughout history in our different monetary systems. So you would see that, the copper coins are the most common coins that we're going in history, were the ones that were, you could go out and buy bread with it, and you'd buy your average groceries, and it would kind of be the normal day-to-day spending. Whereas on the other hand, silver would be for the little bit larger transactions. Maybe that would be for a few days worth of spending kind of thing. And then finally, you would have our gold, and that would be only reserved for those larger purchases or a preservation of that value over time. So you see this kind of track throughout our monetary history, where we see the copper being used way more frequently than the silver, and finally the gold. And we see that in the value reflected as well today. So when I was pulling prices, I saw that copper is sitting around the 450 mark, and we have silver, which has been bouncing around recently around the $30 mark. It sometimes has been dropping below. It spiked as high as the 32 earlier, and we also have the gold that is also up. It spiked up to close to 400, and then we're kind of back down to the 2300 as of right now. And you see that as the crustal abundance went down, you see that the price is actually going up. So let's actually go ahead and graph this on a chart, and I'm going to graph this on a actual chart so that you can see these two things compared. Look at this chart, and I went ahead and I put this on a log scale, so you'll notice that it's actually going up by logs. And the reason why we do that is so that we see the percentage changes on these scales. If you have a log, it's actually going to show the same percentage change even when we have two different sets of numbers. So that's the reason why we'd put these in logs, so that we can actually view the percentage changes more closely. Now, you'll notice that price is represented by the red, and you'll see that for the price of gold, it's way up at that 2400 or 2300 mark, and then we see the price for silver comes down to that $29 or $30 mark, and then finally copper, it falls down to the $4, $4.50 mark. And as the price is actually going down is what we see here. So copper is worth less than the gold. Now, on the other axis, what you'll see in the blue on this chart, that is actually going to show the crustal abundance. So we'll see that gold is not very abundant. That's the first very short blue bar. It only has that 0.004 crustal abundance out there. Now, silver is kind of right in the middle of that 0.05, still pretty rare. That's not a lot of parts per million. 0.05 for silver, that's not a lot. Now, we also should see at the end, copper, that's the largest blue bar on the end, that is the 50 to 70, and I believe on this one it's actually, I used 50 for the chart. And what we see is that we see this negative correlation. As crustal abundance rises, the price per ounce actually goes down. And that is exactly what Roy Sabag had said during his interview. And I actually plan on picking up his book, The Order of Money, and actually reading and having some more further research, because I really did think that this was a cool concept that he had brought forth, that our economics should be tied to the natural order of things, and the natural order of how the earth was formed should be tied to our economic system. And that's a very, very kind of classical and well thought out thought of how money should be working. So I hope that you learned something in this video, and I hope that this kind of gives you some different food for thought when it comes to thinking about your investment strategies, because we really should be thinking about buying these precious metals and buying the things that are hard, really, really hard to actually find in the world. And the things that are really rare are probably going to be the better investments for us. If you have any other things that you would like to see me talk about here on the Tactical Timmy YouTube channel, feel free to leave those down in the comments below. I love hearing from you guys and hearing what you guys want to see on the channel. If you are down below, feel free to leave a like as well. I know that really helps out in growing the channel. I hope you all take care and enjoy the rest of your day.